So the next part of the secondary transition plan is the transition services. There are four most common types. One is instruction, two, related services if the student receives them, employment, and state government connection. So these are things that they need to receive in relation to a transition. So when stating the services, you should use the following formula. So-and-so needs to do whatever behavior in relation to that service. So, for example, in instruction, Nicolette needs to complete all graduation requirements in order to graduate from high school. Jessica needs to receive social work services if that is appropriate. Nicolette needs to further explore her personal and vocational interests with a job coach. That would be appropriate for employment. And then Jessica needs to meet with the DHS representative to explore post-secondary options. Your student should meet with them at least one time to develop a plan for them with government services. Transition goals. Transition plans are required to have two types of annual goals. One in education, employment, or training, and then another in independent living. Most commonly, you would write a goal that covers education and employment or simultaneously, or you can write it separately. Independent living goals are required. Each goal requires two objectives or benchmarks with criteria and progress monitoring scheduled just like academic goals. You should at least do two, although more is suggested if it's appropriate for the goal. You will at least have an education or employment, and definitely will have independent living with the two objectives to follow each. These goals should also follow the SMART format like you would in an academic annual goal. After completing the secondary transition page and your goals, every student with an IEP that's 14 and a half years or older must have this transition plan, right? So you would fill out the indicator 13 checklist, and those requirements include measurable post-secondary goals, the goals that need to be updated annually, evidence that the goals are based on age-appropriate transition assessments, transition services were provided, and the transition plan needs to include the course of study. Students also need to be invited to attend the IEP. So if you've met all of those requirements, then your indicator 13 shows that you are in compliance. So the basis of indicator 13 is to show that your transition plan is in compliant with the law and comprehensive. If you meet those requirements, then you will have compliance. A year after exiting high school, you would then complete indicator 14, where states are required to collect and report data to the U.S. Department of Education on post-secondary education training and employment outcomes for youth with individualized education programs or IEPs 1 year after leaving high school. So if your district is selected by ISB to complete indicator 14, you would then go on their website and get a script to call or connect with students a year after leaving high school to see what kind of things they do now that they've left. It's a way to make sure that your transition plan actually helped the student and kind of see what they've been doing after they leave high school. The summary of performance is another step that you need to take in doing a transition plan if the student is graduating or is turning 22 and they will be exiting the school. It summarizes the academic and functional performance levels and transition needs at the time the student completes school. So if they're a senior and they're graduating, it summarizes that. If they're 22 and exiting a transition program, it would also summarize their performance levels throughout the course of their high school career. It must be specific, meaningful, and written to be student-friendly to help them. They can take this as a document to help them once they leave. It provides recommendations to help the student meet their goals, and it should be reviewed at the student's last transition meeting. So usually it's a meeting just prior to exiting high school.